Surrounded by peers that didn't end their career loving the game. They ended their career kind of resenting it. Hey, it's paying for school. It got me here. It was like, oh, that's just kind of a means to an end for them. And for me, I ended my career devastated, wanting more. I loved the game, and I think that was part of my DNA. But I also think my parents not being the motor, and allowing me to motor myself and go, hey, we'll support that engine.
I'm joined now by a former Division I volleyball player, and she's a current high school and club volleyball coach. And I also consider her a mentor, Coach KB Sallee. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
So before we get into kind of what you're doing now and how I came about you, let's start with what sports looked like for you when you were younger.
Yeah, sports was a big part of my life. I found volleyball late. My family was really engaged with tennis, baseball, softball. So I kind of did a lot of little things and just was athletic. Didn't really know what I loved until fifth grade PE. I was in an after school intramural program, and we did like units. And so we were in the volleyball unit. And my PE teacher, who to this day I still have a relationship with, because this guy, I think, was a huge part of my story, took time to go talk to my mom and say, hey, I don't know if you guys know this, but like she's kind of good at volleyball. And we were like, volleyball. And so I tried out for the sixth grade team that next year and fell in love with it. So then played competitively. My parents did a really good job of kind of checking in with me on my level of interest and desire. So I was playing at a small club my first couple years of middle school with school club alternating. They sat me down when I was entering eighth grade that summer before and said, hey, we see your passion for this. We see your gifting in this. This is a lot of money. If we were to take this to the next level, because even then, I graduated a while ago. I think we were in that first wave of club becoming it. Like it was no longer high school sports where you were going to get recruited. It was club. So, we're traveling around the country, that whole deal. And so when we made that shift, they sat me down as a 13-year-old and said, what do you see in your future? And I was like, I see volleyball forever. Like I knew at that point I really wanted to play in college. And so they said, okay, we're going to make this a serious investment in our future. And that was a huge blessing. And I'm thankful that they trusted me enough for that conversation. One, that they cared about my voice, and that they didn't just push what they wanted on me, but also for them. And I'm a parent now, like it would have been foolish, I think, to throw thousands of dollars at a kid who didn't really want it. And so we had that conversation, and I went into a higher level club, ended up going from there, played in Northern Kentucky. That was kind of my home. Got recruited to go to Morehead State and had an awesome, loving career. Loved that place, still do, and still connected to that place to this day.
So it's interesting you say that about your parents checking in with you. So my kids play hockey, but they play street hockey, so they're not playing ice. And my middle son's pretty good at goalie. So we just had this conversation with him the other day about possibly doing ice hockey and like how the cost of it is so expensive. And the reason why I bring this up to you is, do you think your parents having, and he ended up saying he wanted to play one more year of street and roller, and then we'll see from there. But I've never really heard of parents like really asking those kind of questions. I felt like we were kind of unique by asking it. Do you feel like your parents having that discussion with you, if say they didn't have that discussion with you, do you think you're where you are today? Like, do you think you would have played volleyball to the level that you played it?
I don't know. I do know that I was surrounded by peers that didn't end their career loving the game. They ended their career kind of resenting it. Hey, it's paying for school. It got me here. It was like, oh, that's just kind of a means to an end for them. And for me, I ended my career devastated, wanting more. I loved the game. And I think that was part of my DNA. But I also think my parents not being the motor, and allowing me to motor myself and go, hey, we'll support that engine. Like, if you want this, awesome, we're behind you, but we're not going to push you. We're not going to pull you. We're going to just assist you. And I think that conversation was just a microcosm of that mentality in our home. And it also plays into the fact that while sports took a ton of our time and our treasure, it was not the foremost important thing in our identity as a family. And so I think that was huge for me in terms of like my longevity and my love for the game, because it was a game. It wasn't who I was. It threatened that at times. Obviously, I think any athlete puts their identity at times and at moments in their performance. But I think my parents did a great job, probably ahead of the game. There wasn't, I don't think culturally that was normal. And there was no social media component where people were like encouraging parents to do it right. Like they were kind of standing alone in that, where they were giving me wise counsel that a lot of other athletes I don't think were getting.
We'll get to the social media thing in a minute, because I feel like what you just pointed out is kind of why I started this podcast and what you're doing, like to lead parents in the right direction. But I also feel like there's social media is giving more people this energy right now to like have the negativity and like, hey, my kid's the best, so forth. But we'll talk about it in a second. A question I have for you is who was the first coach or mentor for you that really saw you as an athlete and allowed you to feel seen as an athlete?
I have so many. It's hard to pick one. I would say the very first, I mentioned my gym teacher. I actually invited him back to when I was inducted into that high school's Hall of Fame. He was there, which is so cool. Like my 5th grade PE teacher, he didn't teach me volleyball at all, but just his belief and his voice in that space mattered. And then I would say from there, we had a family friend that was a kind of renowned volleyball coach, not in our area, but across the state. And when I was young, he and my dad had just been talking, and he really kind of took me under his wing, and I would go across state to do their camps at their high schools. And he would kind of bring me in as like this like special guest. And I mean, I was just a high school kid, but just made me feel special, made me feel seen, like you said, and made me feel like worth his time and investment in my talent. It really gave me a lot of encouragement. And I would say there's a lot of people around my life that did that. I had a person in my church who we were blessed to have a church that had a gym. So, I mean, if my parents were talking too long, I was in the gym. And this guy would stay with me and just pepper with me in the gym and things like that. I always had a ball in my hand, and there were certain people that just cheered me on. And then my high school coach she coached me for 5 years. So I was blessed. A lot of people can't say that they had. My college coach stayed, my high school coach stayed. So I had just a great tenure of coaches, but she was, and she's a colleague now. We coach across county from one another, which is so cool. But she was wild. She was not what you would consider a traditional coach in many ways, but she taught me not just that it's okay to bring energy to the court, but that it's like wanted, it's valued. She brought it, and she pulled that out of me and our team. So she would be my first coach that I look back and go, man, she kind of really taught me everything. She was my foundation. And then my college coach, there was just a whole nother level of understanding the game. His IQ, he's just an incredible, his resume, Jamie Gordon, he's the president of the AVCA now. This guy, he's just like, I consider him like the godfather of volleyball. I love this dude. And lots of assistants under him who just really understood the game and saw me. And this might be going beyond the question, but I think this is such a huge part of my story as an athlete. I was never the best, mechanically sound volleyball player. Like I'm not as epically decorated as Tim Tebow, but like I always loved Tim Tebow because people hated on him so much for how he threw the ball. And I'm like, but you know what? Tim Tebow got it done. And he led well. He had respect of his peers. And so I just always had that, like the intangible thing of a leader on a court that coaches, particularly my college coach, saw in me, and he took a chance on my talent. I wasn't clean. I hadn't been trained really well. I was a good athlete that could play volleyball, but I had never been technically trained as a setter, or I had never really taken my IQ to the next level because no one had taught me that. I was just out there grinding on the court. And so when I got to college, everything changed for me in that capacity. I mean, I watched hours of film just one-on-one with him. We would just break things down. I mean, he really poured into me as a quarterback. And so different things were given to me from different coaches, but they all built me for sure.
Well, you mentioned too, like the Tim Tebow thing, like and how he didn't have a certain way of throwing, or like you didn't look mechanically, like you should have as a volleyball player. But what's funny is they always say like championships aren't won on paper, right? So you could have all these great players, but the reality is unless they mesh together, they're not going to win.
Yeah.
And like I really do believe, and I think this is kind of like where you come from too, as the mentor you are, and like what you're doing. 90% of sports to me is all mental and how you get along with your teammates and everything else. Everybody out there has that 10% that's you're just as good as the next person. It's like, you know, and it's I think it's the other 90% that decides what kind of person you are. Are you going to get along with this person? Are you going to be a good teammate? Are you going to be a good leader? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I honestly, I'm in a high school setting, so I'm not going to recruit, but I'm in a tryout setting often. And when I'm looking at a kid, if I see, those intangibles aren't right, and they're whiny, they're complaining, they don't have that grit, they don't look at me, or they don't tend to like react or respond or want coaching, they're not desiring growth. Those things are they're a big deal. And that college coach I was mentioning, he told me a few years after, actually, I was probably a senior, and he was recruiting kind of that next class, so players that I wasn't going to be playing with. And he asked a girl, she accepted, and she signed. And he told me, he was like, I recruited her because of you. I wouldn't have recruited her until I had gotten a player like you, because it was like he took a chance on me, and he went more heavy character and effort and raw ability than paper. And it paid off for him. And so he's like, it kind of changed the way he started to recruit, which that meant more to me, I think, than anything he ever said to me, that he wanted to change things in his program because of that. And so I think one attitude, one negative energy, even if they're a stud on paper, it can wreck everything. And it just makes everything less enjoyable. And so you want the right people around you for sure.
So you put up 2 videos. There's a video you put up, I want to say it was yesterday, and then there's a video you put up today. So let's talk about the one that I saw today. So the one today was great because you were talking about how like you're at like some kind of tournament basically, and like the player that you were watching wasn't playing at like the A, like I don't know the exact scenario, but like the A level of like the tournament, like wasn't in the best scenario of that thing. But you were watching their character, like what they did and how they responded to it. And you had a conversation with this player at the end saying, this isn't where you want to be. You're at like the B level. You obviously don't want to be there, but you're also not showing me that you want to be at the A level, which my takeaway from that was the more important part, was you're not putting forth the effort. And the reason I bring that up is you mentioned earlier about how because I think we're very close in the same age. I graduated high school in 2004, so I think we're pretty close with where we are. Yeah. So we're close in age. So like we grew up in this era of like, there was only like one travel team when you played sports. You know, there's one baseball travel team. There was one basketball travel team. Now all of a sudden I feel like the water is diluted with all these leagues. So to me, do you feel like the work ethic has kind of like crumbled because everybody now thinks because they're on a travel team, it's the same as being like on the A team? So like the reason I asked is my takeaway from you was, yeah, you're on the travel team and you're here, but you're not putting in the effort to be the best, and you're not going to get there to be the best unless I see that effort. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much I can offer toward a social commentary on where we are in the world, but here's what I can offer. Yeah. That video, it was actually about a tryout. So there was a kind of like I don't label them. They're not like signs on the court. We're like, this is the better side.
Yes. Yeah.
But, you're like, you get it. They knew. And she was a incoming senior who was sitting on a court that she felt like she didn't want to be on. And not because she didn't think that's where she should be. Like she actually acknowledged that later. She was like, I get it, but it hurt. It stung. It was offensive to her, And so I think there's a part of that there is this sense of, but I'm this age and I've put in this amount of time. And there is this, and I think I came into a school and an environment that for up to a certain point, not that it was completely this mentality, but there was a sense of seniority might be more important than merit. And I had to come in and kind of say, hey, like, that's not how we're going to do this. And if you disagree with that, I'm happy to have a conversation, but I'll go toe to toe with you. And like, we'll resolve that, because merit always wins when you're trying to be competitive. And so we had to have that conversation with her. So there was just this sense of entitlement, but I'm here, I'm a senior, I've done this. And I was saying, when you come into a tryout or you come onto a team, I care more about your attitude being team focused than self-focused. If you care a lot about how can I serve this team, your own performance will increase. Like that is going to happen. That's going to take care of itself. But if your focus is on self, it actually tears down the team. And anytime I sense that, I address it. And I think it was just really clear in that moment. And what the cool part of that story was that she responded well. She went home and thought about it. She was really on the fence. I might not come back tomorrow. And she told me that. And I said, that's okay. I need you to make that decision. This is your decision, but don't come back tomorrow doing this. You either come back tomorrow being different or you stay home. Like that's the decision you need to make. And she kind of was like, all right, come to Jesus moment, came back to tryouts the next day. And she led the heck out of that JV side. And she ended up being on my varsity bench. She didn't get a lot of time, but she had a role that she understood and she accepted and she leaned into. And that was really cool.
So your other video too, you just mentioned teamwork. So that's where this kind of comes in. So you're having a conversation so I teach 4th grade.
Okay.
Things that I see all the time is whenever I'm talking to the kids at all, they will like kind of check out some of them, right? So this is pretty much what your video is about, was you were saying how right now I'm talking, my lips are moving. Some of you aren't listening, some of you listening. And you pointed out about how it affects everybody. You went around basically like we're a team. And like, yes, this conversation may not directly affect you at this moment, but it's going to affect you at some point in this. And I preach that all the time to my class about teamwork. And like, so did I take away the right thing from that? That like, it's you live and die with the team. It's the teamwork here.
Yeah. And I mean, I think bottom line, there's a sense of respect. You know, like I was raised by a dad who he wasn't assuming I understood things. He looked me in the eye and told me, you're going to look at your coach. You're going to listen. When she's talking, you're holding a ball. You're not bouncing a ball. Like I had a dad that was like, this is how you do it, you know? And so I didn't have to like figure that stuff out. That was just like ingrained in me. But I think there's a lot of kids. I don't know if that's a kids these days kind of comment, or if it's just, I think I was really fortunate and blessed that don't have that. They don't feel that pressure to go, man, this is what respect looks like. This is what being coachable looks like. This is what being a good teammate looks like. And so I say this a lot, like if who I'm leading isn't doing something right, I need to lead them better. Like I can just get mad at them and go, ugh, they're just so disrespectful and, you know, kids. And you hear that a lot. You just hear a lot of leaders, teachers, coaches just complaining about the state of things. And I go, have you led them to a better place? And so in that moment, we were just like, I could just gripe and complain, or I could say, hey, this is why this matters. When I just said this, you missed it, you know, and it's disrespectful. But beyond that, here's why it actually is relevant to you. And we are one, you need to hear as one, things like that.
Yeah. And to kind of go with what you said about like, because I always feel like I say some stuff about the younger generation, and then it's like I feel like I sound like my parents, how they used to say it. But I think part of it too right now is that it's so social media driven. So it's so easy to see, like you see all the negative stuff too, as well as the positive. So it's very easy to catch on. You can see all the kids that aren't responding. So you travel through high school, you get a Division I offer, you go play Division I volleyball. So here's my question. What did it mean like for you to play Division I volleyball? And I'm not talking from the athletic perspective. I'm talking from the social perspective, the emotional, like what did it mean as far as you as a person?
Yeah. It meant everything. I'll share a lot about that, but just to kind of go back to that moment of the offer, like there was a couple things in the works with 2 different schools for sure. And then a few different schools were in the conversation. When you are going through the process as a kid, you don't know what's coming. Like you're working your butt off and you don't know what offers you're going to get. Are they going to come? Like, so I remember the first offer I had, I was sitting down and the coach, I mean, she straight up said the words, I would like to offer you a full ride scholarship. And I legitimately cried. Like in that moment, I was like, this is happening. Like it might not be this school, but like this is happening. So it meant a lot to me because it's so much work. My parents put so much work and so much money into that. So yeah, that was a I don't know. It was just a really cool moment. But when it comes to what it meant to me holistically, I think the danger could be, I'm a D1 athlete. And you just kind of have this thing on you of like, and I'm a D1 athlete, but I'm at this kind of small mid-major. So I kind of had a chip on my shoulder. We were an hour east of UK and we played UK every year, but I went to Moorhead, but like, I was like, I'm going to Moorhead. Like I wore that thing with pride. I had eagles all over me. And so I think there was, I had to balance that of like, what does it look like to be really proud of where you are, but also not put all of your identity into this thing that's going to end in 4 years. Like it feels like it's everything in the world your freshman year. And then you're knocking on graduation's door and you're like, whoa, if I haven't come to terms with that, that's like a cliff that I'm about to fall off. And so I had to deal with that. I think that's the first thing would just be making sure that my identity was in something bigger. And so I had the opportunity when I got to Moorhead. So part of my social media, if you followed that much, which sounds like you have, like it's faith-based. And so I have a lot of roots in my Christian faith. And so when I got to school, I knew God put me there. Like there was circumstances that were kind of wild and kind of outside of my control that led that door to be opened that had once been closed. And I went on purpose for Jesus. Like that's what I said, I did. And then I got to school and I had a rough freshman year, ended up blowing my knee out. Felt really discouraged, really homesick. And there was no athletic ministries on campus at the time, which is now what actually my husband and I do. Like we've been collegiate athletic ministers for the last 10 years. But there was no ministry happening. And so I found my way through a lot of muck and mire my freshman year to what was called the BCM, the Baptist Campus Ministry, and found a family there. And so I had a family in the athletic world like that. I think athletics provided me an instant family. I had friends, I had roommates, I had support, I had fun, but I also needed some spiritual depth. I needed people to not just say, let's have a good time. I needed people to say, how are you doing? Yeah. You seem off. I see your behavior seems a little bit different than who I think you are. I needed challenge. I needed growth. And so the BCM provided that for me. But my first year when I was there, I started looking around and realized there weren't a lot of athletes present. It was very much a different kind of environment. I was living these two lives of like D1 athletes culture and then like Christian culture. And I was like, this needs to come together. Like, why is this not? And so I reached out to the director of that ministry and said, hey, what are we going to do? We got to get some athletes here. And he said, that sounds like a great mission for you. Like, he's like, what are you going to do about it? And he didn't say it in an I don't care kind of way. He said it in a, I think this is why God has you here kind of way. And he equipped me with some things and let me use their space. And we, at the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, launched at Moorhead because of that void that was there. And so ended up meeting my husband through that ministry. And now we've worked with FCA for 10 years. And so D1 athlete, like that mattered to me, but it was leaving me short of some things. And so I would just encourage any athlete any human being, but if we're speaking athletes right now, if you're heading into a college environment, you need to make sure that you're looking for who are going to be my people and my community that are pouring into my heart and my mind and my spirit, not just how much faster I can be and how much higher I can jump. So that's one thing I definitely had to do.
So you mentioned, the Division I athlete thing stands out, but then the size of your school is obviously another reality too. How often does that come up in conversations with the kids that you're coaching now? Like, because I've always said, and I kind of feel bad now saying this because I heard you say something earlier about like the college scholarship and like it paid for school, but then some of these athletes like hated afterwards because it was like a means to an end. But like I always tell my kids, it's like you should be excited and proud that you get like a scholarship, whether it's to a JUCO school or to a school to Alabama, whatever. Like you should be like, to me, there's no difference. Somebody's paying you to go to college. Yeah. So like, how often does that come up in like conversations with these kids that when you're trying to explain to them, like, yeah, you might want to go play, and I don't know what schools are great at volleyball, but like you might want to play here. But the reality is if this school offers you, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it comes up a lot. If you're looking at a kid who's, I think everyone's just trying to find their place. Yeah. And they don't know, it's hard to know what pool I should, or what pond I should fish in. And so as a coach, I'm always helping kids kind of navigate that. But I think it's also really wise to kind of have options. And so, I mean, I think I pursued like, I don't even know. It was like something stupid, like 25 to 30 different schools sending like actual, I mean, we were mailing actual DVDs. But like, I mean, that's what it was taking. Like we literally enveloped and sent things to 30. And it was like, yeah, we had local, I mean, Kentucky's insane. We have so many options around us. Within 3 hours, we have incredible options. We had tons of like small schools, big schools, all of it. So we, and Cincinnati included, like we just had a lot. So I would just say, don't ever just be like, this is the one I want to go to because of this. It's like, hey, have a dream school for sure, but we need to fill up that list and go, yeah, who's going to pay? I mean, I tell my kids all the time, I used to teach. So I was a high school math teacher as well before ministry. And I used to also teach ACT prep courses. And so ACT was like a huge deal. It still is, but it was like, you can get a lot of money if you raise your ACT score. And so that conversation was always brought up, like scholarship money. And I've just said, you know, on the academic side, people will say, I want to go to this school. This is the school that I want to go to. But I'm like, man, if I'm a parent and I have my kid who says, I'm willing, I want to go to this school, but I'm going to go into about $100,000 worth of debt, or I can go to this school for free. I said, if you're in my house, I can tell you where you're going. And so, and I think the same thing applies with athletics. Like there's a, you know, I had an offer last minute. I had an offer to walk on at UC, and which is literally 15 minutes from my house. I live right by the river. And it was an intriguing offer because there was more respect at the time. There was more respect on that name. Now, what's ironic is that we were competitive with a school like UC in the volleyball realm, but UC football, you know, there's all this stuff about different schools. And I think we need to kind of like turn that volume down on those things. That's what we would call eyewash. I think things that we just want to look good. We want to have that name on our chest, but what's your role on that team? What's your playing time going to look like? What's the financial support they're offering you? How are they going to value and what are they going to pour into you? If you can get a better situation somewhere else, why wouldn't we look at that? So yeah, I think that conversation comes up in counseling with kids all the time.
Well, and I also think too, that like the reality is, with the exception of a few fields, what school you went to really doesn't matter. So it's really more about how you project it, you know, like it's nobody's going to, I mean, because there's tons of stories of basketball players or NFL players that they came from a little school and then they have had great careers, and nobody's going to remember that they didn't go to Alabama.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is the one thing that you wish that parents and student athletes would know about, like the real journey in sports and what it really looks like and what success really looks like?
Man, that's a really big question. I think my answer is changing. I think as I have my own kids, I'm so thankful for that. I think that has given me a new lens and a new perspective on all of this. You know, I went through it as an athlete. I've been through it as a coach, but now my oldest is 11. My youngest is 7. They're all athletes. I've got 3. And I feel, as much as I preach against this, and this is what's so good, because we need to be humbled and we need to see the whole story. I'm thankful for what I believe to be the truth, but I'm also like, okay, and this is hard. So for me, I've always said, like, we don't want to get caught in the rat race. We don't want to make decisions based on pressure. We don't want to just try to be keeping up with other families. Or you hear somebody's on this one team and all of a sudden you're like, oh, you're on this frenzy to figure out, what do I need to do for my kid? And so I think what my husband and I have been really fighting for is to remain at peace and continue to touch in with each of our kids. We work with, like, our ministry has been at a mid-major D1 school for the last 10 years. And so my kids have been raised around excellent athletes. And what I would hate to be true at the end of their 18 years is that they think the only way to please us is that they would become a collegiate athlete. That their value is somehow wrapped up in whether or not they get an offer to a Division I school, or whether or not they have this type of story. Well, this is what mom and dad's story look like. This is what all of our heroes' stories look like. And so you can, even if you're not trying to make that narrative happen, it's happening. And so we are just constantly talking to our kids. So when you ask, what would I want parents to know? I think what are we preaching to our kids matters the most. Yep. And if at the end of the day, we're saying it is sport, then no wonder they're crippled by fear and there's performance anxiety. And we feel this, I have to do so much to get my kid where they have to be, otherwise they have failed. And I have failed that, like, I believe, like, and this is a spiritual thing, but like, I believe that's a lie that is wreaking havoc on families.
Yeah.
And so I think you can really create space for, we're doing some things with FCA sports where we're trying to go, hey, how do we give excellent coaching and put kids in more competitive environments, but not sacrifice our family at the altar of sport success?
Yep.
We're learning as we go. I mean, we're having to morph things, and we're competing on Sundays sometimes, and we're having to go, okay, what does that look like spiritually? And how do we meet families in the middle of this? Because we're not saying sport is evil, but we are saying living a life only for that is devastating. So I would say that's probably the thing that's closest to my heart that I want parents to understand.
Do you ever have kickback the other way with like athletes? So like, I remember there's a big thing, I want to say probably like 10 years ago, Dabo Sweeney was at Clemson. And like one of the biggest things with him at Clemson was they did like a prayer, like, or I don't know if he didn't require the kids to go to like, to mass but he did something like involving the church with the kids.
Yeah.
And there was like some pushback, especially depending on where you live in the country, you may feel one way or the other about it. Do you ever see that pushback towards you? Like when there's like an athlete that wants to be mentored by you, like they want to be in your situation, they want to be on your team, but their family doesn't necessarily agree with the spiritual side of it. Do you ever get that kind of like pushback?
Yeah. That's something we've had to navigate my whole life. I mean, and I respectfully navigate it. I'm a public school, high school coach. I was a public school teacher. But now in the private, like club side, it's totally different. So on the high school side, I have to be thoughtful. Everything I do is pretty much the same. How I coach, it's the same. My heart for the kids is the same, but I need to just be really thoughtful of my language. And so there are times when it's whole group things. I'm not going to be doing Bible study devotionals. If it's mandatory, it's not that. But we talk a lot about the heart. We talk a lot about loving each other. We talk a lot about how do we manage conflict. We talk a lot about putting the team first and dying to self and saying, I care more about, trust. We talk. So all these things, they're truly biblical concepts, and they're things that I believe God speaks a ton about. And if I was at an FCA club, like I am on this side, yeah, I would be saying, hey, all of that plus, and here's the Bible, here's what it says. Right. And so I don't think I've run into a lot of obstacles, probably partially because of where I'm at in the country, but also because I'm really thoughtful about that. Like I'm not pushing this particular belief scripturally on anyone. I'm just saying, hey, here's how we're going to operate character-wise. Here's how we're going to value-wise approach each other in the game. But FCA sports, I mean, it's really born out of that idea of, well, what if we just have a club that everyone is opting into that? It's not a school thing. It's not a government. There's no confusion. It's just people are saying, in the same way that they could go play upward basketball at a church, they're saying, oh, you're telling me I could play select volleyball, but do it through FCA? And every practice, we're going to get great training, and we're going to sit around and have a 15 to 20 minute Devo and hear from different people about their testimony. I mean, all of that is opted into. And so we haven't had any pushback. We're a year in. We're about to do tryouts for year 2 coming up this coming week or 2 weeks from now. And we haven't had any pushback because everyone's signing into that. They're signing up for that. On the public side, if we do faith stuff, and I know Clemson's story. I mean, they have a really strong FCA presence, and like that, Dabo has been known for that. Typically in those environments, football's a little different. I don't know. Football always has chaplains. Always, like football is just kind of like a different culture in that way. But for us, we do like a team Bible study that I bring in someone from the outside, helps lead that. It's not mandatory. Anyone can come. It's optional. It's before or after practice. Like, it's just like anything else, any other club at the school they could choose. And so, we're really thoughtful around that. There's never a moment where we're like, you have to do this or else you can't play for me,
Let's talk about self-confidence. So one of the things that I deal with all the time in 4th grade, and I teach 4th grade math, and I did actually made a TikTok about this the other day, which is like, all right, here's the deal. Like 4th grade math isn't that difficult, but what happens a lot of times that I want parents to know is like kids lack confidence. And it's not that fourth grade math is hard. It's just the fact that they're lacking the confidence, they're not confident in themselves, and that's why they struggle with the math sometimes. How do you deal with that, like with confidence and the self-doubt? Because I'm sure that, especially because you coach volleyball and you deal with emotional teenage girls, that, that's a different beast. How do you deal with that? Because there's a lot of, I know what it's like as a boy when I was a teenager growing up and the confidence that I had. So I can't imagine what it's like for a girl.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just so you know, just so we can connect on a personal level, I taught high school math. And I did not because I was like a math rock star, but because I love the idea of stepping into a scary place with kids. A lot of kids are like, literally research shows that like kids think about math the same way they think about like a hot stove that burned them once.
Yeah.
It's like they have like this, like, I can't touch it, like it'll burn me. And so I get that. Like you have to increase confidence and self-belief. I would say, yeah, similarly in volleyball, the way I typically approach that is I celebrate big and I correct kindly. And so I'm direct. Like somebody recently said on one of my videos, they were like, why is she so angry? I was like, and some other person came in to my defense on that. They're like, direct isn't angry. Like there is a standard in our gym. And so if there's something that's correctable and you're just choosing not to, there's going to be a directness about how you're coached. But if you're just giving all your effort and you're failing, I celebrate that. Like we have to redefine a win a lot. And I think kids, like, I don't know. I was doing a lesson the other day with a girl from out of town and first time working with her. And so she's nervous and she doesn't know, she's like, what's this going to look like? And she was not serving great. And she just kind of was hanging her head down. And I was like, hey, you could be at home, not getting better.
Yeah.
And you're right here, right now, you showing up and even failing makes you better. So like, let's redefine that. And so like, a lot of eye contact, a lot of like, hey, no, we're not going down, we're going up, and trying to just speak. We talk a lot about what encouragement means. It means speaking courage in. And so just putting courage into people and going, I'm going to freaking cheer you on because of the effort that you're putting in. And I promise you it'll pay off, that kind of stuff.
Well, somebody had said to me a couple years ago about like changing my attitude towards stuff and saying like, instead of you have to do this today, it's like you get to do this today. So like I started doing it in my math class. Like when the kids would come in the morning, I'm like, hey, we get to do fourth grade math today. Like it's just like, it's funny because it's like I first was doing it kind of like sarcastically, but it's become a thing now with me that it's just like, I've gotten so used to saying it. And it's like a reality to me now. It's like we get to do math. I love math and I love having fun with it. That it's just, I think you project that to the kids and it's like, yeah, your wins have to be your wins. Everything doesn't have to be the greatest thing in the world. It's just whatever is a win for that moment. Yeah. One more question before we get to the rapid fire. So I watched this video, the video that actually got me hooked on you and what made me reach out to you. So the one where you were talking about former players coming back, because I think this video, in my opinion, represents exactly where we are as like with a generation and a culture of like parents, coaches, players. So I'll set the video out. So the video is you're talking to the parents after, I'm assuming was like a game or something or a match. And you were talking about how former players that came back and you noticed that parents are like coaching from the sidelines instead of cheering and being parents. And my biggest takeaway that I applaud you for that you said was you talked about pumping them up and saying how like, I want you cheering on the sideline. I want you like basically like in the face of like, hey, we're here, we're supporting the girls, we're supporting the team, but that's where it kind of ends. I don't want you like coaching, like you can't have too many people coaching the kids. And I feel like right now that's how sports are. And there's somebody who actually commented on the post saying owners own, players play, coaches coach. And that's like a theory that I've lived by forever. So like in my mind, like I'm the parent when I go to sports, you're the coach of my kid. If my kid's doing something wrong out there, you're going to correct them. Like I leave my parenting at the door once I drop my kid off to you for the hour practice or the hour game or the hour and a half, whatever it is. Like you're the coach. So if my kid's running around or little Johnny's running around doing nothing, I don't think it's the parent's job to say anything. I think it's your job as the coach. And I feel like that's what you were trying to say. Now, the problem is you get all these, the couch keyboard warriors and the Monday morning quarterbacks on the couch that want to tell you about, what you should have said and not said. But what was the message you were trying to get across with that video is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, dude. So, first off, little backstory. That video was in the crock pot for a long time. I did not want to post it. My producer, who's basically just like an assistant for me, but he's like gifted in all this stuff. So he's always cooking things up and going, and he's like, Caitlin, I think this video has to go out. And I was like, I don't. I knew it was going to stir up some stuff. And I just felt like it was like, I didn't want to be disrespectful to my team or my family. So we actually waited to the end of the season because I love our families. Our families are incredible. When you stack our families up against most other teams, like it's like, it doesn't even compare to like the level of crazy. Like there's like a lot more crazy out there than we experience, but we have a really high standard for how we are going to do this. And it's all very clear. And so it was falling below that standard. And so as a leader, I felt it was my job to say, hold on, like this has to shift a little. And it just so happened to be brought to my attention they weren't even players from that club. They were players from my high school who had graduated and were just like coming to see me. And they were like sitting on the bench going, oh, like, it's close. The bleachers are right close to the court. We've got a lot of parents who have some volleyball background, so they're chirping things, and and it's not everyone's going to go, like there are going to be moments like that. Like I don't want to be too dramatic on that. Like you still are a human, but we need to be thoughtful. We need to be mindful of like what we're just pushing in terms of stealing focus from the game and from the kid. And so I just took that moment and was like, I could hear this and not address it and then feel like I failed.
Yeah.
I think as a coach, we have to be willing to have hard conversations. And I don't know. I think there's a lot of times people aren't. They're willing to be offended. They're willing to be disappointed, but they're not willing to like kind of stick their neck out and go, hey, we got to have this hard conversation. And so I just kind of stepped forward in trust that they would respond well. And they did. It was fantastic. It wasn't a slap on the wrist. It was hey, we are a team. At the beginning of the year, we talk about that. Like I'm coaching your kids, but I view all of us, we are all on this team. And so if I'm asking myself to behave this way, I'm asking your kid to behave this way. I'm also asking you to behave this way. I've even had grandparents come into environments and I'm having to go to parents and go, hey, can we talk about this? Because this is still affecting our team. It's typically actually the grandparents, if I'm being honest. It's that second layer removed. But I was just trying to kind of say, we want your energy. I feel your support. I know it's coming from love. And sometimes things that are really good intentioned can be missing the mark. And so we just needed to kind of reevaluate what our goal was with that communication. And I'm also like, I get it. It was so interesting. Like, I'm new to the social media world. So like I've been coaching for a long time. I've been mic'd up for about 3 months. Right. So like, I'm feeling a lot of feelings. There's been a lot of things that have been hitting me of like, oh, there's a lot of opinions out there that I did not care to hear. But I'm working through that and it's getting easier. But I think there's just something to be said for the parents. And I don't want to go over it again, but the parents need to, they need to know that my standard was set. This isn't just me coming out of the blue. There was something that was agreed upon. And I think that was important. So.
I thought the video hit spot on. And I don't even think, I can only see like the vision from like the point of view of mine. Like I couldn't really see the parents' faces, but from what I could see. That
was on
purpose. Yeah. Well, I know. Nobody seemed like they were like offended really. It's just funny though, the comments, like you're right. Social media kills me because it's just like, and exactly what you just said about, we don't know what your standard was. You've now cleared it up as far as your standard's been set a year ago to whenever it wasn't that day. Mm-hmm. But because that's when the video came out and that's what people see, it's like, that's what they just comment on. But I thought that video was great. That video is legitimately like what you said in that video is 100% why I started this podcast. Because I think there's so much that needs to be said to certain people that isn't said. and you said it the way you needed to.
Well,
So rapid fire.
Let me say this really quick. One thing I was really encouraged by, like I've made some jokes about the keyboard warriors, and this been really, but I was blown away by the number of parents who were just like, whoa, needed to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Like, there was like this humility response that I wasn't prepared for that I was really encouraged by. And that's what also tells me that I think people are okay with coaches who were like, hey, let's have that real honest conversation. Not me seeing a coach type on Instagram or on Facebook, oh, parents these days are the worst. Like that's what you're used to seeing. I'm not coaching anymore because these parents. No, let's not lose good coaches because parents are hard. Let's become better coaches who know how to coach our parents. And I don't know. I think that's like my heart's cry. Like I want coaches to learn how to be better equipped to handle hard moments with parents. And also something that's a staple of mine, and I don't think this is necessarily wrong. I could maybe shift it a little. I coach a lot. And people say this to me all the time. They'll come up to me like, man, I think you were saying something after every point. That was wild. I was impressed. And I'm like, yeah, I can't talk the next 3 days. Yeah. So it's not like I'm a coach that's sitting back, not saying anything. And so for parents to come into that environment and then be talking a lot and coaching a lot, it's really distracting. Like I don't let much slide. Like if I'm seeing something that needs correction, I'm going to correct it. And so I need more trust and more buy-in from the families to allow me to do that job well. So.
Yeah. You're not just coaching because it's like something you want it, like somebody told you to do today. You're doing it because you want to do it and love it. It's funny. You I don't know exactly what you just said about it, but it's just like I was telling my wife this morning. There's this thing that my goal for this class for this school year coming up is I want to stop like with the negativity. Like anytime anything new is like introduced to me, it's easy to go, oh, like right now AI, like everybody's so freaked out about AI, right? And I was telling her, I was like, my goal should be, and everybody else's goal should be not that you have to use AI or use whatever tool they're going to give you. It's how can I use it? How can I use this? Like, how do I use this to my advantage, or how do I use this to help me? So like, I think that's kind of the thing too. Like what I get from you a lot with your videos, it's not so much like, this is what I'm telling you to do. It's just like, how can we use this? How can we get better from this? How can we, develop from that?
Yeah.
Rapid fire for you. So what's your favorite volleyball drill and why?
Oh gosh. Okay. Easy question. We call it rotation quads. 4v4, you start with forearms and hands only. So it's competitive, but you can't swing. So you have to be really smart, which is literally how I built my entire career because I was small. And then you go into down balls, and then you go into back row attacks, and then you go into front row attacks. So it's like, it can take a while, but I always find my kids being the most competitive and have the most fun. It never feels like a waste.
What's one word that would describe your coaching style?
Intense.
Okay. What is the most underrated part of being a coach?
Influence. I think I don't know if that's underrated. I think it's the most important thing. I think coaches have influence, and they need to know if it's being used to construct or deconstruct. They need to wield it wisely.
It's funny you said the thing about influence. So like, I always realize like I start the school year with the kids, and I never know like how much I'm getting through to them or whatever. And then it's like, you realize when April and May come around, how much you've influenced them. Like how, when they're getting ready to move on to the next grade, it's like when they start having conversations with you as like you're beyond their teacher now. It's just like, it's weird. It's like, wow, I really did impact you, and I influenced your life that way. What's your favorite sports movie?
Oh, I think Remember the Titans.
Oh, it's a good one. That's a good one. That's up there for me. Yeah.
I also like Miracle. You're a hockey guy. I love Miracle too.
Yeah, I like hockey. What's funny is I've had a lot of people mention Miracle in the last couple podcasts I've done, but they're all kind of like a younger generation. They're like in their mid-20s. So I was like, is that like a mid-20 thing, like where everybody's like really into Miracle? Like, I mean, I like Miracle, but that to me, like Remember the Titans is like the first one that I would throw out there for sports movie. Or then there's Sandlot. Like, there's a bunch of movies that I felt that I grew up with. What's the most impactful piece of like advice that you've ever gotten from somebody, from a coach or a mentor?
I would say identity. I've shared it a lot. So that's number one, is make sure your identity is rooted in something that will last forever. But something I haven't said is I would say take care of your relationships. I think even in a sport environment, like if we are prioritizing skill development and winning over handling our relationships, it will all crumble. And so my coach in college told me, he's like, hey, as a setter, I also want you to be like the team psychologist and like the team counselor. Like, he's like, I need you to like really understand everybody on the team. That was from like, in his lens, it was like a volleyball thing of like, hey, if someone's on the court, you need to know them well enough to know, do they need a slap on the butt, or do they need a high five? Do they need a hug? He's like, you need to know, like, you need to be able to read them. Like, I think emotional intelligence is really important. But I think beyond that, like, you got to deal with conflict. It's hard. People don't want to do it. They want to look the other way, but it's like, pick your heart. Are you going to deal with it later? Yes. So like, let's just deal with it now while it's small.
Do you find it hard to deal with, or not really hard, but like, do you find it difficult to deal with when you're dealing with one athlete that takes criticism one way, right? And then you deal with another athlete who takes it another way, and you don't have to be the same way with both of them. And my question is then there's like the third athlete that sees this. Do you ever have that issue or find it difficult where it's like, it's like, I always say life's not fair, right? So like the way you are to one player may be different. Like your overall theme for your team is going to be the same, but like you may approach one player one way and deal with another player the other way. Do you ever have to deal with that conflict though, like where other players see that and they're like, oh, well, why'd you do that for this player A, but not for player B?
Yeah. I would say if I'm dealing with something that's kind of heavy or like feels like this is a harder critique or a harder thing to bring up, I'm probably going to do that one-to-one anyway. So it's not going to be very real visible. What I have encountered is I've had, every year, I mean, I just had lunch with 2 former players yesterday that are dear to me. Like, I will be in their life for the rest of their lives. Like, I love them, and I don't love them any more than any other players, but I've always said this, and I say this every year to all my players. I say, I want you guys to know how much I'm for you and how much I love you, but you have to open the door. I'm not going to kick down the door of your heart. Like, God didn't do that to me. He let me choose him, and I'm not going to do it to you. Like, but what happens is people start to play a narrative of, oh, well, she must have a favorite because her and this other player talk more, or there seems to be more intimacy or more engagement of the heart. And I'm like, whoa, the F word in our gym, favorites, like we don't play with that word. Like, if you want more time from me, I'm right here. Yeah. And I say that to kids all the time. Like, I am right here. I love you. I'm right here. The door's open. My phone number's right here. Like, so I would say I've had that in the past where players, they're looking for reasons to feel like the victim. And instead of leaning in and going, oh, I want to build a relationship, they lean into jealousy. And yeah.
I have kids that say that all the time. Like, oh, you talk to this student more than this or this. And I'm like, well, have you ever come up to me and introduced this conversation? It's not like it's not like I'm shooting down your conversation. You're just not having the conversation. And I've never thought of it that way, but you're right. Like, I'm not going to kick down the door into, I might use that from now on. Like, I'm not going to kick down the door into your heart, because the reality is like, yeah, I'll talk to all 30 of you in this class, but if you're not going to come over and have the conversation with me, I can't go seek the conversation with you, and I'm not going to. And it's got to be like,
there are moments where I feel like I begin to kick. Like it's a knock. And I'll do that. Like, I'll do a lot of check-ins. And then there are some people who will receive that check-in. They'll open the door and they'll go, yeah, actually I need help with this. And then there's other people who are like, I'm good. And I'm like, okay, okay, that's where I won't intrude anymore, So yeah.
How do you help athletes learn to play with purpose?
Talk about it all the time. I think, on the FCA side, like, it's literally ingrained into what we are saying on the heart. So like, we're doing Devos every day, and we're like talking about like, what matters deeply, how to invite God onto the court. Like I talk a lot about, and this might be a little outside the box, but I'm not a singer, but I mean, I wish I was. So many times in my life, I wished I could sing. But I was gifted with this. I have this ability, and I can play a game, and I can do it. I can do it to the best of my ability. And when I get out there on the court, when I used to play in college, when I coach, still, I would tie my shoes up, and while I'm tying my shoes up, I'm having thoughts that are going through my head, and I'm running down the list of like, God, this is for you. God, make this not be about me. Make all of this be for your glory and not my own. God, when I'm anxious, I give it away. Help me love my teammates. Help me do everything I can on the court today that would honor you and not detract from who you are. Like, and then as a coach, I'm saying the same thing. It's always during the anthem, when the national anthem's playing, I'm praying and I'm just going, God, help me coach in a way that honors you today. Help me sit in frustration and not respond in my flesh and not become a jerk. Like I'm actively, I think it's just, if we're not remembering, we are forgetting. That's something I say all the time. And so how do I get a kid to play with purpose? I don't let them forget. I don't let them forget that this isn't who you are, that what you do today on the court, we actually, one of my favorite practical tips is we call it's running a lap. So LAP before we start every practice, and that's high school or FCA. I just changed a little bit of the wording, but you run one lap, single file, quiet, no one's talking. And this is a mental warm up. It's before we do our dynamic stretching, and that you're remembering that before you've touched a ball today, you are loved, you are accepted, and someone is proud of you. And I say God is proud of you when I'm in FCA, because I want them to understand like the creator, their maker actually has a purpose for them that's higher than this. But before you touch a ball, that means you can't earn more love, acceptance, and pride, and you can't lose it either. So there's a sense of I'm playing with purpose because I'm not playing for my identity.